Welcome all of you for joining us tonight. I hope you had a good fall weekend. And so I'm going to call this meeting to order with a moment of silence and a salute to the flag. And tonight, the moment of silence is being dedicated to Lou Schneider, who is has been an important part of our Somerville community. He's the crossing guard over at the Brown School. Ms. Barish, would you like to say a few words about Lou? Because I know he's been an important part of the community before we do the salute to the flag. Eleanor, are you muted? Try that again. Thank you.
Carmen, I'd be honored to say a few words about Lou. He was a beloved member of the Brown School community, having served as a crossing guard there for a decade before retiring a few years ago when he was in his 90s. Every day, he had a cheerful greeting for each student, staff member, parent, and neighbor who crossed the street at his corner. He didn't just help the community feel safer, he helped everyone feel cared for. A generation of Brown School students and families will remember him fondly.
Thank you for sharing that about him. I've heard about him for years. I have seen him on the corner, and it is one of the reminders that all of the adults in our play some role in our kids' lives, and is so deeply appreciated. So thank you for sharing that. And now a salute to the flag, Ms. Santiago, please. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Superintendent, would you call the roll, please?
Certainly, Chair. Dr. Phillips?
Present.
Ms. Krepshin?
Present.
President McLaughlin? Mayor Curtatone?
Present.
Mr. Green?
Here.
Ms. Barish?
Here.
Ms. Patone?
Present.
Dr. Ackman?
Here.
And Ms. Norman?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Fantastic. And tonight, the next item of business is the report of student representatives. Tonight we have Natalia joining us as the high school is going through a selection process so that we will have 2 student reps. Natalia, are you there? And you have the floor.
Could you hear me? Can everyone
Absolutely.
hear me?
Yes.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Natalia, as many of you may know. The first subject I wanted to address is once again that remote 7 class. Once again, many of my peers or just students have been commenting to one another that remote class 7 is ending too late and that they'd prefer to perhaps start like instead of 9 o'clock, maybe 8 a.m. because many students like myself work right after school and we lose hours because of that remote 7 class. And many of us find it unfair that some people do not have that block. And then that just kind of creates this kind of like unfairness between everyone. And then many of my peers are scrambling to talk to their counselors to change their classes, to try and get a morning class. And then their whole schedule just gets bumped into different places. So many of us are wondering, could we possibly start at 8 a.m. rather than that 9 a.m. so that everyone has the opportunity to end school at the same time?
Yeah, Superintendent, did you like to say something to that?
Through you, Madam Chair. So Mr. Mazza and I will talk to Principal Lagambina and the department heads to see what the possibility of that is. I think that as you know, probably in talking to Principal Lagambina, in order to, the high school schedule is complex. In order to be able to get the classes to work and have everybody have the most potential to have the APs that they had, as well as their music electives and art electives. It sort of necessitated that 7th block. But let us go back and see what the potential is to put it on the front of the day as opposed to the end of the day.
Superintendent or Natalia, could one of you give a quick summation, if you're not at the high school, what Block 7 is?
Yeah, so it's basically an extra period that some students have in order to make their electives work better. Or, for instance, if they're taking a lot of APs, those are static blocks that you can't move easily because they're one section or two section of them. So the staff came up with kind of this Block 7 as a way to ensure that they can continue to get music elective, art elective, in addition to taking some other kinds of academic courses. But to Natalia's point, not everyone has it. So yeah, let us go back and take a look at it and see if there's any potential to put it at the beginning of the day.
Natalia, do you have other items to share with us?
Yes, I just have the one last report about fall sports. So for fall sports, they're given until November 1st to have conditioning. So this is time for them to practice and get back into shape before the season starts, which has been pushed into late February. The sports that we'll be playing are boys and girls soccer, football, cross country, and golf. Unfortunately, volleyball is unable to play for this season. And from what I've heard, girls soccer has started their conditioning. They started at 6 a.m. today till 8. So,
Wow.
Yes. And then I know that cheer has started their practice today, this evening. So, thank you.
Thank you for that. Does anyone have any questions for our student rep? We appreciate it. We know that you have a long day of school and you have work and then you join us and you do that cheerfully, and we appreciate your time. It's important, especially hearing from a student perspective as we are in this very unusual year. So we are going to continue to rely on you to share the student perspective with us. Thank you so much for joining us. And now, Mayor Curtatone, would you like to give an update on sort of where we are with buildings and where we left off in the town hall and where we are today?
Sure. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the school committee, and public tuning in. You have to bear with me. I'm going to see now if I can get my screen up. Can you see that?
We can.
Yes.
So this is obviously we had a very well-attended public presentation where the city, the schools presented on our approach to reopening, and working with you, Madam Chair, the superintendent. We agreed that at every school committee meeting, in addition to other meetings we will hold in between, we'll give at least a status update where we've come since our last meeting. I don't have a ton to report, but there are, although incremental, not insignificant updates, and I just want to go through them briefly here. And I'm sure we'll put up, if folks have particular questions, they can email where they can send an email to, or if they want to see the presentation that we held about a week ago, where to view that. So as we framed that presentation, if you recall, for those who were able to in attendance, it really is around what are internal and external factors. I'm going to focus on a couple of the internal components tonight. As the external, we are regularly and real-time monitoring where we are in external factors, community, transmission rates, and other things, and how we'll monitor that as part of our indicator table moving forward. But tonight, I want to give updates on a couple of components of the internal factors we are analyzing and evaluating, and we'll be trying to influence. So one of them, as Shirley very well talked about, are building and ventilation and how to achieve low risk scores we presented in that meeting. And this is important for us. As I made mention in the public meeting, we all agree. We're not going to sacrifice the safety of our student population, our teachers, our staff, the community at large for attempting to achieve the minimal. We want the lowest risk score possible in all our school buildings, and that is one of the critical factors we must achieve prior to opening, assuming the external lines up. So just some updates where we are in our building assessment. We are now under contract with PMA as owner's project manager. If you recall, PMA, if you don't, but PMA, for those who don't know, also serves as the OPM, the owner's project manager for the new Somerville High School project. A very inside baseball, but very significant achievement since we met last with the public is we were able to obtain from DCAM, that's the Department of Capital Asset Management from the Commonwealth, approval for an emergency procurement process for the building improvements. Why is this significant? As we get to, reminding folks the dates we're trying to reach and milestones in order to start opening buildings, we really need this approval to expedite as fast as possible all the work that needs to be done in our buildings. So, there is an outside chance of building committee, as I mentioned before December 1, and if they are, we are certainly going to be working to open those buildings as they become ready. But I'm reminded when a lot of the ventilation and filtration upgrades are already happening on what we would deem an accelerated timetable. So there's really no guarantee that an early opening would be possible, but we will not get there. We would not get there without this approval. So this was an important milestone we just reached. In terms of where we are on the next steps, our own infrastructure asset management department is working with our owner's project manager, PMA, and the public schools to align the sequencing of what work will be done first and when, and prioritize that work. Again, this is also to reconcile with the school's reopening plan. We're working, securing the contractors necessary to complete the work, the scope of work, which was outlined by our outside consultant, Fitzmyer and Tachi, and we'll be finalizing those schedule in the next few weeks. As part of the emergency procurement process, the infrastructure asset management division is soliciting quotes from 3 different contracts, and I can report this evening that today we have 1 full response, 1 partial response, and we're close to having a 3rd. And at the moment, we're estimating the cost range of the work to be in the right now, as I speak, $5 to $7 million range. So not an insignificant amount of work that has to be done. So I just want to remind folks of that. The other internal component I want to comment and update you all on is where we are developing and finalizing COVID-19 testing and contact tracing protocols and our plan. This is important. These are 2 important components between the building air filtration and surveillance testing that the Commonwealth and DESE did not address, did not have a plan for, and Somerville I submit was in the public schools, along with the city, is setting a standard and priority for. So what I can update now is that we are evaluating all vendors. We're engaging with vendors, and we're evaluating all those vendors and protocols, and we're trying to determine what would best fit us. We are finalizing logistics and a schedule. We'll be identifying a specific testing locations and a schedule in terms of who gets tested when. And initially, we started with the PCR test, and also developing our own internal school-specific contact tracing plan. And so that some testing logistics really can't be put into place until decisions are made about the exact order in which what schools will be open, and as well as the final universe of staff and students, and that's obviously dependent upon how we determine what buildings will be ready when, and which population will be suited for those buildings. Obviously, the school department and the committee's priority. So that is a brief, not a broad update, but specific to a couple of points. We are making progress, and next time we meet as a committee, we'll certainly have many more updates. And again, as we remind everyone, we will be holding another public meeting later this month, and as well as November, But every time we meet as a school committee, I plan to give an update to start the meeting, working with the chair and the superintendent and the committee. So that's it, Madam Chair, and I think, I hope we put the address up on where people can seek out the entire presentation from a week ago and where they can send in their questions. Thank you.
Yes, Eleanor. So I have Eleanor, Ms. Barish, Mr. Green, and then Dr. Phillips. I don't know if we can, and then Ms. Patone. I don't know if a few of us, if we're not speaking, might turn off our cameras, whether that would improve the bandwidth capacity. I don't know if it's only on the mayor's end. Thank you so much for that. Thank you for the update, Mayor Curtatone. And Ms. Barish, you have the floor.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. I'm curious to know, is that rough estimate of $5 to $7 million including all of the schools? And by which I mean, would that include the Brown School? As I understand that the Brown School, according to the figures we saw in the presentation by Mr. Raish, the Brown School cannot get to that within that safety zone. So I'm just wondering if the $5 to $7 million includes the Brown School, if it's all the other schools.
I do not believe it includes the Brown. I have to confirm, but I do not believe it does. And that's not to say we're not going to work on the Brown to lower the risk. We just could not achieve the lower risk. Maybe at a time, the moderate risk would be acceptable depending what's happening with external factors, but I will confirm that. I just don't think it does. So.
Thank you.
And
Thank you for that.
That 5 to 7 million for you, Madam Chair, could change up or down. Rarely does it change to down.
Mr. Green, you have a question for the mayor?
I do. At the presentation at the town hall, we got the word that, not surprisingly, the mods are actually in pretty good shape, that they would need relatively minor work to be usable. Given that, and obviously I say this knowing that there is a lot of other stuff that would have to happen for something that's to be usable for us as a district, is there any reason why they couldn't be available early as an option for us to use as swing space or sped space or EL space before, maybe before December 1st?
I don't know if the superintendent in the chat, if she asked the same question, but through you, one will be utilizing the mods and as the high school is being completed for COVID staging for the high school as well. But to your question, it's a good one and an important one. We are examining utilization of mods, whether those or others, as temporary space, including, I can report for you, Madam Chair, to the good school committee person, as well as other members in the public, other spaces in the community as well, including other vacant spaces, commercial spaces. So we are in that process of exploration on a very rapid pace, speaking to property owners. And again, we are looking at the potential of whether it's those mods or bringing in other mods. I don't know if the superintendent wanted to add to it because she's been pushing this point very strongly and rightfully.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Madam Chair. So yeah, this is the question on everyone's mind is what assets we have and in what order they'll come about. So this is something over the next couple of weeks we're hoping to be able to sort of bring together in a picture. We've been walking the buildings with the mindsets of where we could have different programs. We have to consider things relative to the facilities, the bathroom, particularly for special education programming, in terms of the locations relative to where the students in the program are and the transportation of getting them there. So the mods are definitely a group of classrooms that we would be looking relative specifically to the high school, of looking at our high needs populations at the high school as a mechanism for bringing them back potentially earlier. That, of course, is with the assumption that there will be several other asset buildings that can come online that will enable us to get special education, substantially separate or self-contained programming, high needs, ELL relative to levels 1 and 2, and then, of course, our pre-K to 2, which is the first set of priority students. So That is, our hope is to have that coming together as these assets come on. We're looking at the buildings, kind of all areas of the buildings, and to the mayor's point, we're looking outside to also see what additional kinds of spaces we might be able to either lease or to take advantage of. So
And Matt, if I may add to that as well, because I know the question may come up, perhaps someone didn't tune into the meeting or we didn't state it clearly enough, whether or not, while we have city buildings, just move kids there. It's not that simple. Number one, we have to adapt the building for this particular education use. And I want to remind everyone, the school buildings are the best buildings in the city. City Hall is still closed and will not be opening for the foreseeable future, as well as most of the city buildings, other than traffic and parking, which will be opening. That's it. So our best buildings are our school buildings, and it's all hands on deck. The schools are the priority to get open first.
Thank you. Dr. Phillips, you had a question?
Thank you, Madam Chair. First through you, I just want to appreciate the mayor for coming to make this report and committing to make reports at many meetings from now on. The community has lots of questions about the reopening, the buildings, the metrics, the testing, and I appreciate your willingness to come share updates and answer questions. So I crowdsourced my questions tonight, and so I'm just going to share some questions that came up from the community. The first one for you is related to COVID-19 testing, and I'm not sure how far plans have developed, but what are the options if a child can't be COVID tested regularly? The questioner was particularly concerned about children with sensory issues. But then another questioner asked, what if teachers or students just decline to be tested? What are we thinking the process will be?
Well, I can thank you for the question. So let me try to answer both of them. I'll just first for context, we are starting with type of test, a PCR, nutritional PCR test, which is a nose swab, and they're doing more anterior swabbing. But testing is evolving. More rapid, accurate, rapid tests may be available, and where we will saliva tests, and we'll be continue to explore that even as we launch with PCR. And we're working with experts in the academic and medical field as well. And that'll continue to evolve. We understand there may be accommodations need to be met for those who cannot be tested for medical reasons, and the team will be addressing that. But I want to make clear it will be mandated. You are required, absent of that, you must be tested, and that is a Board of Health. The Board of Health will make that order and mandate, and then it's up to the school to determine what the policy is there. But it's we need to think of the greater good of everyone in the school.
Thank you. I'll get back in the queue.
Okay, Ms. Batone? Laura, I think you're still muted.
Thank you. Just a quick thanks again to the chair and the superintendent for putting the time in to have these conversations, and to the mayor for the updates as well. There's a lot of questions in the community about the standards that Somerville is putting forward. I'm not questioning, I don't think anybody's questioning the intent and the desire to have this as low risk return as possible. But there's a lot of confusion, and we know nothing is really coming that's super helpful from the state, but that why our standards seem to be more stringent. And I'm going to use language from constituents, so I hope this makes sense. A belief that some of the building standards are at the level of a hospital, not necessarily of a public building. Concerns about the testing itself in terms of the frequency and the scope of the testing, and questions about who we're using as our experts in terms of infectious disease. So I'm just going to put those out there. I know you spoke to some of it at the meeting. In this meeting, you kind of made a statement of who's tested when. I'm also curious if that testing plan that was shared last time is the same testing plan, or that you expect this possibly to evolve. So thank you. I'm going to take this offline.
Thank you. I'm just going to speak more higher level because we did address these in the public meeting, and I appreciate and respect everybody's opinion. One, I have full confidence and more than full confidence in the experts we have gained access to. We are actually blessed to have them in Somerville, as well as they've been advising municipalities from the very beginning of the pandemic. One, why are our standards more stringent? Well, let me ask you, why aren't others to our standards? Why hasn't the Commonwealth issued a plan around safety in schools, around building air filtration standards? They have failed to do that. They have failed to address it, or to submit protocols for surveillance testing, when experts have stated these are two components we should address if we want to safely return teachers, staff, and students to schools. So I don't think you play down you're saying sports to a lower talent level, to lesser standards. I think we set it. And we've done that from the very beginning. The approach to schools has been no less than the approach to entertaining or analyzing or deliberating what parts of our lives and our economy we should open. And we have two goals in mind, and they're consistent, guided by 2 stars: ensuring that what we do does not jeopardize the health and safety and well-being of our community, in this case, the teachers, staff, students in the neighborhoods, community at large, and ensuring that if we do open, the likelihood is that it's sustainable, that we remain open. All the best information we have around school reopening is lessons learned from other parts of the world. And, you know, there was a lot of talk about whether there were risk of transmission in schools. We've seen that blown out of the water. There is transmission in schools. We've seen major outbreaks and closure of schools. So I have full confidence in our approach. We're not going to deviate from it. Full confidence in our experts. We're always willing to listen to opinion, and we will take that in. But we're not going to jeopardize. We refuse to jeopardize the health and safety of those students, the staff, and the community.
Thank you for that. And then Dr. Phillips, you have one more question. And I also would just like to acknowledge that City Councilor from Ward 4, Jesse Klingon, is also joining us tonight, both as a capacity, I'm sure, as a parent and as an elected official. Dr. Phillips, you had another question? Can't hear you. Muted.
Thank you. Sorry. Thanks for the time. Thanks for your answer to the previous question, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Madam Chair, just one quick question that's come up a lot. Folks are wondering when the full building status report will be made public.
So was that for me, the superintendent? Because I can try to answer.
Sorry, that's to the mayor. Sorry, through you, Madam Chair.
You know, we will. It's a few weeks away. I'd say 3-4 weeks away. The most important thing we need to do is finalize who the contractors will be. That'll help us understand not just the status, but the game plan for executing the plan. You know, when we can get going on the work, how quickly we can get it moving, and as soon as we select, we'll be very public and report back, and we've selected a contractor. And as we know, for every building, what we expect, and working closely with the owner's project manager, PMA, when we expect how we can get buildings up in operation again. As you can tell, remind everyone, as you can tell from the figures we're talking about spending, it's not a small job, but we will move fast.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you, everyone, all of my colleagues, for your questions, and thank you, Mayor, for being available to us and keeping us updated in the multiple of forums. So we appreciate that. With that, I'm going to move on to item number 3, approval of minutes. If I can get a motion. Is there a motion to approve the June 8th, 2020? There's a motion by Mr. There's a motion by Mr. Green. I'm sorry, who seconded it? Was that Emily seconding it? Seconded by Dr. Green, Dr. Phillips, pardon me. Is there any discussion on the minutes? Can I get a roll call vote on the approval of the June 8th minutes, please?
Certainly, Madam Chair. Dr. Phillips?
Yes.
Ms. Krepshin?
Yes.
President McLaughlin? Mayor Curtatone?
Yeah.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Ms. Barish?
Yes.
Mr. Tone?
Yes.
Dr. Ackman,
Yes.
and Ms. Norman.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. The minutes are approved. We're now on to item number 4, public comment. I need to read this, and then we only have 4 speakers signed up, so each speaker will be allotted 3 minutes. So public comment is open to all Somerville residents. Sign up sheet, we know how that's going to happen. Speakers are allotted 3 minutes each to speak, though depending on the number of speakers, the chair has the discretion to limit the comments to 2 minutes. Tonight we will get 3. Public comment is not a discussion, debate, or dialogue between citizens and the committee. It is a resident's opportunity to express his or her opinions on issues of school committee business. Public comment is intended for the school committee to receive input from the public, but not as a method to receive specific requests, which should be channeled through school and district leadership or individually to school committee members. To this end, members of the committee will not reply to public comment in the course of the meeting, though individual and members may follow up with and items from public comment may be taken up in future meetings. The committee and or administrators will not be prepared to directly respond to citizens' questions posed in this forum. And public comment is a matter of public record. Speakers should be aware that all meetings of the Somerville of the school committee are filmed on public access and are recorded for future viewing. Public comment will also be made part of the minutes of the meeting. Submission of a written copy of your comments is encouraged, and comments without a written submission will be summarized in the official minutes. To ensure multiple opinions on a given topic are heard for other reasons, the chair may call on speakers outside of the order of the sign-up sheet. Public comment is not an opportunity to speak about specific employees of the Somerville Public Schools in any way that they can be identified. Any attempt to do so will be immediately ruled out of order by the chair, and speakers will not be allowed to continue. Interpretation services in the district's identified target languages of Spanish, Portuguese, and Haitian Creole will be available whenever possible, and residents are expected to give at least 3 business days notice that they will need interpretation services. To request an interpreter, residents should contact the executive secretary. And with that, we have 4 speakers. First will be Annie March, and then Eiley Conti Fields, then Julia Tooth, then Matthew Ellison. And when you start to speak, if you can give us your name and your home address. And if there are any members of the Somerville Public Schools staff who are not residents, that is also, I will allow them to speak. So our first one is Annie March. You have the floor.
Hey, can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Hi. Oh, yay. Oh, it worked. Annie March, 29 Berkeley Street. Remote. Oh, I have kids at Capuano and at Argenziano. Remote learning is going well in my house. I appreciate all the care that's been taken by our teachers and our administrators. Our teachers are awesome. My kids are adjusting, but I think it's going to work okay for us. And I'm worried about kids who cannot adjust to remote learning because of their disability. I would like the school committee, administrators, teachers, STA, service providers to look for opportunities to offer small group and one-on-one outdoor learning and therapy sessions for these kids. And I want that to happen immediately. Basically, if there's a teacher or service provider, therapist who wants to meet in person with their students, they should be given a tent and a time and a place to do that. And I think it can be really simple if all those things align. It could just be like a sign out sheet on a tent that a principal puts up. I think it would be great if principals had a plan to offer this, to say to teachers and therapists, if you want to meet one-on-one or in small groups with students, this is what you need to do. And I think always meeting in person should be optional for parents. I want to say that I've emailed the STA president twice about this and have not received a response. And I know remote learning is working well for many students with disabilities, but I worry that it's not working for some students and they are not learning because of their disabilities. Okay, that's all I got. Thank ya.
And I'm muted. Sorry about that. So next up is Eileen Contini Field. Are you there?
Hi, can you hear me?
Absolutely. You have
Okay,
the
great.
floor.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Eileen Contini Field. I live at 215 Summer Street. My son is in the first grade at Winter Hill. I also have a 3-year-old daughter who's been joyfully attending full-time in-person preschool since July. I cannot tell you how many different types of privilege I enjoy, from being white to being fluent in English to being fully employed, and yet I am on my last thread. In the wake of the most recent virtual town hall on school reopening, I asked to meet with my city councilor, Ben Campen, to discuss Somerville's school reopening plans. I was incredibly frustrated by the diffusive and obfuscatory nature of the decision-making process around all aspects of school reopening. Parents don't know if decisions from when the remote day starts and ends to which buildings need a humidifier and what type and who will service them when they break down are being made at the classroom level, by the school principal, by the superintendent, or by the mayor's office. A functioning democracy should support hearing the voices of the people, but emailing the hardworking members of the school committee seems like screaming into the void, as we have heard back that most decisions are out of their hands. When we met, Mr. Campen was polite and apologetic, as he told me that historically the city council in Somerville has taken a hands-off approach to the schools, and that historically this distance has been appreciated on both sides. I want to highlight, though, how much the situation is not normal. Every parent or other adult who has to oversee their SPS child's all-remote schooling, or who is paying in money or basic desperate goodwill for another adult to help them, is a citizen of Somerville whose daily life is being impacted by what is happening and by what is not happening in our city's schools. The towns around us are reopening their schools to their youngest and special needs children, many of them with great transparency around the extensive science-backed safety measures they are taking. And we in Somerville wait week after week for crumbs of information to drop from the mayor's mouth, since no one else has any answers. It would probably be more reasonable to say this at a city council meeting, but this is the meeting I have time to attend, while also working a full-time job and sharing remote learning duties for my 6-year-old with my spouse, with our endlessly patient and relentlessly kind classroom teacher, and with that stupidly blinking monster icon in Class Dojo. In closing, I would like to wish all my fellow Somerville Public Schools remote learning parents, extended family, caregivers, and facilitators a happy National Teachers Day. Thank you all.
Thank you. Up next is Julia Tooth.
Hi, I'm unmuted now.
Okay.
I'm Julia Tooth. I live at 40 Pennsylvania Avenue, and I will make this quick. I'm a mother of 2. I have a 15-month-old, and I have a 3-year-old with autism spectrum disorder who was diagnosed via Zoom this past spring. He's been evaluated for an IEP and was found to qualify by SPS, special education, at the Capilano. On parts of the assessment, he was found to be at the level of a 1 to 2-year-old. Clearly, remote school is developmentally inappropriate for my child. I worry that his social and emotional development will be permanently hurt by a lack of in-person schooling. And it's difficult for me to understand why Somerville has adopted stricter standards such as humidification, as we've discussed previously, than neighboring school districts, and not chosen to bring back the youngest special ed students. Boston, Cambridge, Medford, and Belmont, to my knowledge, have all restarted special education for this age group. I would like to remind all present, for many of us with children who qualify for IEPs or currently have them, there is no other school option, really. I can't send my child to a private school unless they have appropriate special education. The one option that exists for us is far out in the suburbs and would require me to buy a car and quit my current job. Please consider opening the schools that have appropriate HVAC for vulnerable SPED students like my child. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And our last speaker tonight is Matthew Ellison. Matthew, are you there?
Can you hear me?
Yes, you have the floor.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great, thanks. I appreciate the comments of the other public comments, and I guess I have a couple of comments. One just about the inconsistency from the mayor's plan, and I'll give a specific example. So for the record, my name is Matt Gregorsiewicz. I use Ellison for logging on to. It's my wife's last name, and that's the kid's last name. I'm at 14 Ashland Street. So I have a preschooler who was going to go to the SMILE program this year, and SMILE is doing remote-only preschool 5 days a week. Makes no sense. And what makes also no sense is that Agassiz Preschool on Summer Street has been, since the state permitted it to open, has been doing in-person full day full classrooms of preschool kids 5 days a week. They all wear masks, and everybody's doing fine. So it's just completely incongruous that the city of Somerville, with all its resources, can't possibly do any kind of in-person preschool, and yet the state permits a private preschool in the same community to operate full blast, full time, much to its credit. They've done a wonderful job. So I think this belies the inconsistency with what the city is doing and the approach the city has taken. The mayor asks why we should be questioning why every other community in Massachusetts isn't being as stringent as him. Respectfully, Mr. Mayor, you appear to be the outlier here. The air quality, air handling guidelines that you are applying to Somerville public schools are completely, it's using a sledgehammer to kill a fly. Nobody else is doing this. Concord Public Schools, for example, have kids going 8 to 12 every day, and they're not, to my knowledge, they're not doing that. I don't want to live in Concord. I want to live in Somerville, and we're not serving our kids appropriately. But my bigger point is that for kids, and I've sent my written remarks to Ms. Pitone, kids pre-K to 2 cannot read yet. They don't know math yet. And these are important skills that they cannot learn over a laptop. We have a short window of opportunity here to get these kids to do whatever and parents will do whatever it takes in these for these grade levels. We will do whatever it takes to get these kids in front of their teachers. We'll go afternoons, we'll go weekends, we'll go out into the parks, we'll go out into the schoolyards. But these kids need to be in front of their teachers, and the teachers need to be in front of their students in order to teach these basic building blocks effectively. And we're not doing that, and we're failing these kids. These kids have a significant potential for suffering long-term learning deficits because they're not being taught these basic building blocks at this stage of their neurological development. Once these kids have the basic building blocks to read and do basic math, maybe we can accomplish this with laptop learning. But there's no evidence that this is effective. This is effective teaching over a laptop. Thank you for your time, and I appreciate the work of the committee and the mayor, but please consider these comments. Thank you.
Thank you. And that concludes our public comment for tonight. We are now going to take an item out of order and go to, new business, item number 8, new business, letter C, the acceptance of FY 2021 grant funds. Superintendent is.
Yes, Director, through Madam Chair, Director Gorski is here.
And
Here he
thank
is.
you so much. So, Director Gorski, if you could walk us through what these different grants are, and also if you have it handy, how much of it has already been, what we've accepted and what we may have already spent, or let's do the acceptance part first.
Sure. So we obviously have our entitlement grants, Title I, Title II, Title III, Title IV. Title I is obviously our largest grant. It helps fund our math and reading programs along with professional development. Title II funds training, recruiting, and retaining of high quality educators, including teachers, paras, and admin staff. Title III supports our English language learners, including funding professional development for teachers and administrators and family engagement programs. And Title IV, which funds student support services, including funding for AP exams. So those are our entitlement grants. We also have an additional federal program, which is the Adult Ed program, which is a major funding source for scale. On the state grant side, we have the Behavioral and Mental Health Grant, which funds social emotional supports, especially for our English language learners who are arriving to the District of Trauma. We have an additional the High Set Scale Grant, which again is another funding source for our adult adult ed program. And then the Community Adult Learning Services Grant for $258,646 in additional funding support for adult ed. The Commonwealth's Preschool Partnership Initiative Grant, which helps provide funding to support our early education programs. That's one that that school committee may remember as we were going through our budget discussions. There were just some discussion whether the Commonwealth was going to fully support that grant this year, but they have. And then the other state grants that we have are two smaller food services grants, which help to fund fresh fruit and vegetables at various schools, other food supports, and some salaries.
Thank you for that presentation or an explanation of all these different grant sources. Can I get a motion to accept?
I moved.
Can you please, please say your name and then so I know who it is?
This is Emily, so moved.
There's a motion by Dr. Ackman, seconded by?
Eleanor is seconding it. Eleanor Barish.
Thank you so much. Ms. Barish is seconding. All right, any questions or discussions on these grants? Mr. Green.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, as someone who's been pushing for, higher and more levels of transparency in our budget process since our time on school committee, I'm excited to see this change by which we are actually accepting the grants in public open session. I'm just curious to know if there's a reason for it or just constant improvement in our budget processes.
Through the chair. I think it's part of our desire to have a more transparent process, but also a desire upon the city auditor that we accept all grants individually as opposed to kind of in a blanket form.
Sounds good to me.
Are there any other questions or comments on that? Ms. Krupchen.
Just curious, through you, Chair, are these similar in numbers to things we typically get every year, or is some of this different or new because of COVID, or? Yeah, that's a good question.
Through the chair. So our funding for FY21 is pretty stable. Obviously, that's something that we're going to watch. We, as we've discussed at various school committee meetings and our finance meetings, we'll see what funding is going forward. But for this year, this is similar to the funding that we had for FY20.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments? Director Gorski, these are the amounts, are these the same amounts that were in the original budget presentation back in whenever that month was? I don't know if we did it in June or July, or have these numbers changed at all since we initially saw them and built the budget?
These are very similar. Excuse me. These are very similar numbers to what we presented at that budget presentation.
Thank you so much. And I know it makes for a long day, but I do appreciate doing these grants, the increased transparency, doing it more publicly. We do it in the subcommittee of the Finance and Facilities, but I think it's important, especially during these kind of crazy times, that as much information as we can share with the public as possible. So I appreciate you being here. And if there are no other questions or comments, can I, Mr. Green.
One more, building off of Ms. Krupchen's comment. I know, as you mentioned, our funding this year is stable for Title I, but I do remember you mentioning there was some concerns with Title I going forward. And I think if we're doing this in public, it may behoove the public to hear that. Can you speak to that a moment?
That is a great question.
To the chair. So the funding, and we've discussed this previously, we were notified by SC last year that basically we're one of the districts that's on a watch list based upon income, the relative wealth of the district. This is an issue that we may face decreased Title I funding in FY24. So that's something that we need to monitor and obviously have that conversation with DESE.
Thank you. Superintendent Skipper?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. And also parts of Title II are being phased out. And and so we took a big hit a year ago, and it's a 5-year phase out unless something changes federally. So you know, we will continue to see some amount of decrease.
And I don't mean this to be a pop quiz question, but we also have gotten a significant private grant for early education. Where are we? How many more years of that grant do we have? Because it was significant amounts of money.
Are you
The
talking
2
about,
more years.
excuse me, the CPPI grant? Is that what you're referring to?
Yes. Can you translate those letters into words for our public? Maybe it is a pop quiz. Sorry.
The Community Preschool Partnership Initiative Grant.
Thank you.
I have it written down so I can translate it. Yeah, we have, I'll clarify with the superintendent, I think you're referring to this year and next year when you're saying the 2 years. Yeah, correct.
But it is a renewal grant. So in other words, we have to wait each year to ensure that it's actually funded.
Right.
Correct.
Okay, any other questions or comments before? Okay, hearing none, can we get a roll call vote to approve the acceptance of the federal, state, and other grants?
Certainly. Dr. Phillips?
Yes.
Ms. Krebshin?
Yes.
President McLaughlin? Mayor Curtatone? Mr. Green?
Yes.
Ms. Barish?
Yes.
Ms. Patone?
Yes.
Dr. Ackman?
Yes.
Ms. Norman?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you so much. And Dr. Gorski, I'm promoting everyone tonight. Director Gorski, thank you for joining us. Do you, off the top of your head, know the date of the next Finance and Facility meeting?
October 14th.
October 14th. Thank you so much
Yes,
for
next
this.
week.
Good times. All right. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you next week. And so now we're going to resume the agenda in order and go back to item number 5, the report of the superintendent. Superintendent Skipper.
Great. So tonight we are having our what we normally do annually, which is a report out on our summer activity. And we had once again Kaylee Smith is our director, so we were very fortunate. And Kaylee actually has a new position in the district, so I'll let Kaylee, who can come on camera, share that, and then share a little bit about what happened over the summer. She has a presentation. I know Mr. Mazza also wants to do some introduction and context setting to the presentation.
Fantastic.
Sure. Thank you, Superintendent Skipper, through you, Madam Chair. As you know, one of the important pieces of our school district is our summer school programming for our students to assist with building skills, making students more successful, building relationships, and getting students prepared for the next school year. In any given year, it takes a lot of time, effort. It is a lot of work, fun work that we engage with students in. But this past summer, as you know, things were a little different. Things were all virtual. All offerings, with the exception of community schools, were virtual, which created its own set of challenges that Kaylee will speak to when she presents. But I will say that I am proud of the work that all the staff did, that Kaylee did, in keeping all programs running smoothly in a virtual environment, which is not easy to do, especially given the time frame in which the planning happened. So I want to thank Kaylee publicly, for the work that she has done. I want to thank Director Trevisoni for special education programming, Dr. Davila with the spell programming, our community schools programming, calculus project, and so on. But it's work that is necessary, and I will turn it over to Kaylee to present summer school programming for last summer.
Well, welcome, Kaylee. Ms. Smith, it is always a joy to see you. You bring such enthusiasm and organization and patience to what is sometimes momentary chaos that can happen when you have kids in schools, and you've impressed me year after year after year with your ability to take it in, respond calmly, and help kids continue to move forward. It is truly a beautiful thing to watch. And when you took over the summer school, I knew good things were going to happen. And this summer, more complicated than ever. And again, you rose to the challenge. So I'm very excited to hear your presentation and always welcome you at the school committee. Are you muted? Let me see if it's on our end. Where did you go?
Let's see. She, I see her.
Is she? Look at us troubleshooting. Okay.
Hold on, I just sent her. There we go.
Me now?
Yes, now we can.
Okay,
Yes.
all right, good.
This is what
Hello.
I'm talking about, right? A little bump in the road and you hang through and you just move right forward.
Hey, listen,
Welcome.
if mute is my biggest problem tonight, we're all right. So it's nice to see you all. Thank you very much for your lovely introductions. So I do have a new position in the district. I am the district coordinator of social emotional learning services and supports, and I'm the director of the SEEK program at the Kennedy School, and I'm very excited about that. And this will be my last meeting as Miss Smith because I got married over the summer, and my new—
Oh, congratulations.
Thanks. So my new last name will be Galatano. So now I'll spend the rest of my life spelling my first name and my last name. So there's that. Let's see. So I'll go ahead and get started with the presentation. I don't know how to share my screen. Oh, who just did that? Catherine? She's magic.
She is magic.
So this is Summer School 2020. On the next slide, I just talk a little bit about how some of the things basically that Chad spoke to, which was the difficulties of the unprecedented times, kind of a lot of curveballs thrown to administration, but certainly to teachers. And teachers really, really rose to the occasion and did a great job with remote learning. And they also came up with some great suggestions for us. So in the previous years, I think last year, my main focus on the slides was kind of the schools from which the children came and attended which programs. This year, the slides that we're going to see following this one and beyond are going to show us the attendance rates, because it gives us an idea of not only how many kids were there, but how they engaged. So on the next slide, if you don't mind, Catherine. These next 4 slides are going to be special education, and each one just has a little graph that just gives us kind of an overall average of who attended each week. So it starts off with a weekly breakdown, 4 weeks. The overall average was 66. No, that's okay. You can go ahead, Catherine. And this one was ESY, the extended school year. It gives us an idea of how many. It looks like they had most students who attended were in the highest level were grades 1 through 2. And then it got a little bit lower in their participation rate in grades and the higher grades, grades 5 and grades 6 and 8. The next one is life skills. And they had a pretty good overall average. There was one class with 10 students, and then below just breaks down each week as it looked like for the teachers. And then the next one is SKIP, and SKIP had, their numbers were fairly low, but I think that, and I'm not gonna lie, I don't know the reason for that, but it was broken down by week for a total of weeks. Well, it's hard to track too because there's only 3 students. So I think that perhaps the way that the teacher was able to engage with each kid each week kind of throws their numbers off and makes it look really low when it probably shouldn't look that low, if that makes sense.
Can I ask you, when you say it's a program like SEEK, if you could give a quick explanation of what it is, because we are so used to speaking about these programs, and I don't think everyone in the members of our public know what the different programs are.
Oh, sure. So do you want to go back to the beginning, or do you want me to just—
I think going forward, that would be great. Like what is SEEK?
Okay, well, SEEK or SKIP?
A SKIP. I'm going to stop. You go forward, but anytime you use a name for a program, if you could just give us a quick, and that is, or the PATH program or whatever it is.
So SKIP actually doesn't break down to be any, like ECIP is like Early Childhood Intervention Program, ESY is Extended School Year. SKIP, I don't know what that is an acronym for. Christine, tell us.
Hey, Kaylee. SKIP is Somerville Kennedy Intensive Needs Program.
So it's really
for students with the most significant intensive needs.
Okay. Thank you, Christine.
I'll stay here in case you need me. Phone a friend.
In life skills, can we also define life skills?
Life skills are for students who have borderline intellect, who require the curriculum related to life so that it's an application of the skills. So it's not, it's learning, many of the foundational skills, but then really applying it to life, which it takes ongoing life planning for better post-secondary outcomes.
Right. And I think what's important for the audience to know is these are many of the programs that when we refer to high needs special ed, and we talk about wanting to get our students back in phase 2A, these would be the programs that we would be talking about: ECIP, life skills, SKIP, SEEK.
Absolutely.
Thank you, guys. We can go to the next slide, which I think, takes us out of special education and puts us into the Somerville High School programming. Hey, Sarah, I see you there. So this is for the Somerville High School. There are 112 students who were recommended for summer school. 6% of those students were from Full Circle. The percentage of the students who were recommended and then registered was 79%. The next slides will show us their little pie charts. Hey, Patricia. And they can, if you want, you can jump in, Patricia, and talk about the high school if you'd like. Oh, you're muted though. I'll keep going until you're unmuted.
Oh, I'm not muted now.
Okay, all right.
I can jump in if you'd like, and if the last slide would be shown, it might be more helpful. Thank you for doing that. So we got 79% of the folks who were recommended for summer school who actually attended summer school. So you have to take that as it is. There were folks who were recommended who didn't end up attending. And then, at the very beginning here, the data on by 7/10, which was like the end of the first week, that you can see there over 50% of the kids were not working. So we got off to sort of a slower start than what you would expect and what we've experienced in the past. That was I think a byproduct of the learning environment, which was difficult for a lot of folks to adjust to. In terms of the green mark there, where we don't use Edgenuity for all of our credit recovery or summer school learning. The English and the social studies department, they're not using Edgenuity in the same way that, which is our sort of online platform that we've been using for credit recovery in summer school for a while. English and social studies, they have been using other mechanisms that incorporate more writing due to the sort of the limitations of the Edgenuity platform. If you look at the different content areas that of students who needed credit recovery, you can see that math is far and away the highest. And so that's one of the reasons why we've continued to use the online platform that we have to recover credit for math. In terms of the overall enrollment in summer school this year, I was actually, it was 6% of the students were from Full Circle. So that's just an important data point. And another point that I noticed isn't on here, which was a point to consider, but something to consider, was that I believe it was 48% of the students who participated in summer school this year actually earned credit. So it was a lower percentage this year of students who earned credit. Typically it's higher. So it wasn't due to the multiple factors involved in putting kids through summer school this year. We didn't get as many kids who actually recovered their actual credit.
Yeah,
if you'd like.
I want to jump on that point because, you know, I think without
Mary, it's hard to hear you.
Am I echoing?
Yes.
You hear me now?
Yes.
Better.
Better. Yeah.
When you think about there's roughly about 1,300 students, 1,250 to 1,300 students at the high school. It's about 10%, which is less than what's typically recommended for summer school. And these would be students that are being recommended because they struggled with remote learning. So one of the things that was a question was, do you, since that was the only delivery mechanism we had, do you take students who have already shown they struggle with remote learning and use remote learning to recover? So,
Right.
but absent having another methodology, that was the choice. I mean, I think what we tried to do was really small groups, one-on-one, in an effort to be able to reach them. So although the 48% is low for what we normally are able to recover for credits for students, it was 48% of a group of students that had struggled with remote to start. So the fact that we were able to get half of them over the finish line by doing different kinds of support mechanisms in the remote, I think at day's end was a step towards success. I think the big question that, you know, we always continue to ask is, okay, so of the students, of the 112 who did not recover, what happens? So you just talk a little bit about at the high school for those students, if they're dragging credit, what would typically happen for them when they come back? Go ahead, Trish.
So that's a really important question to ask. And so one of the disadvantages of the system that we were forced to use this summer, we really had very little alternative, was that it was strictly online. Whereas what we normally experience for credit recovery or summer school is very much a blended opportunity. And so that blended piece where you have the really close assistance and close attention to from a teacher or a tutor or a volunteer. So for the folks who were not successful this summer, they still need to take their Algebra 1 or their chemistry or whatever it is, but now they're in a smaller environment with perhaps a volunteer. It's more of a blended opportunity whereby there's more direct attention and focus from the teachers. So more along the lines of what we were able to do, ironically, in a normal environment, in a face-to-face environment. So I have higher hopes for their, and I'm in one of those classes myself, directing students and facilitating in a blended learning environment. So I have much higher hopes for their success in the fall than in the summer.
That's right.
Thank you, Trish.
You're welcome.
So that is actually a nice segue into Sarah's slide, which is the spell program, because I feel like Sarah, just based on what I read from what Julia wrote me, and Adriana, I think was the other woman who wrote me an email, is that right? Is that it seemed like the experience that was had in the high school program for spell, which is a couple slides ahead, if you don't mind, Catherine. I think there'll be like a picture of a little kid, and then there'll be, back one. Back to maybe, but at any rate, the summer school, it seemed like the experience that you had was very different. It seemed like you had a very positive experience in engaging the students and having them participate. And I'd love for you to tell us, just based on what I was reading, what you all sent me, I would love for you to tell us a little bit about that. You're muted. Go forward one.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you, Kaylee. I think that really, as you said, teachers were the key. We had 2 teacher directors, one for elementary and one for high school. And we made the decision that we were going to outreach to those language learners that did not engage during the spring. So we knew we had, you know, a tough road ahead of us. And those were the students that we brought in, about 50 or so at elementary, 38 at the high school. And these were kids who simply did not engage. So during the spring. So a team of teachers, the directors, Melanie Martins and Julie Allen, and support folks, the liaisons who are now, you know, working full year, and parent leaders outreached to the families and to the students themselves to bring them in. So I think that's really a whole lot behind the numbers. I think the other success is that the parts of the day looked very differently. So as we're doing now, we had synchronous learning, we had asynchronous learning, and we had one-on-one. And we found that the participation in the synchronous was absolutely more successful than asynchronous for language learners at beginning language levels. And when we did do the one-on-one, when it was scheduled, rather than drop-in, we had a whole lot more success as well. So the different parts of the day, the efforts to get kids online, the efforts for community building were really successful. And then I think too, we had a unified curriculum focus. And this was from grade 2 through grade 12 or grade 11, rising grade 12, which was on something that was really meaningful, and responded to kids' lives. And our theme was essential workers and social activism. You know, so there was a unifying and personalized connection that kids could make, and you know, so it was meaningful for them to attend and participate.
Thank you, Sarah. Could you also, I noticed that you guys did something for BU Wheelock. Can you just tell me a little bit about that?
Yes, so we were so successful that our 2 directors and 1 teacher, Sam Blomberg, were invited to present. They did a webinar, and Kaylee, I don't have the name of the webinar, but it's something like, you know, don't accept failure, or it is success, or, you know, something really kind of a motivating, I wish I could remember the words, but that, you know, we can do this, you know, that the kids that we might assume can't do this can do this. And, you know, if we have that expectation and we design programs that are have ways for kids to engage, they absolutely can do this.
That was awesome. Thank you so much, Sarah. I really, I enjoy working with you, and I am so impressed with the work you guys do. I think you're wonderful. So thank you.
Likewise. Thanks.
And the next, so that'll take us through SPELL, and there's our little shout out. There's the SPELL kids to the calculus project. And on the next page is the calculus project. Yeah, their graph. I think that from talking with Kenya, I think that some of the issues that she ran into or challenges were not, I mean, they weren't unique to her, really. I mean, it was similar to what we were hearing Trish saying, and just as far as trying to get kids to engage remotely. And I think that was a real challenge for, and we'll get to, that's a challenge that we know, but as we go through the slideshow, there's also a list of not only things that folks found to be challenging, but solutions that we had suggested for them and things that we did find to be a benefit to. So we can skip to, there's the little people. Community schools had a great showing. The red indicates the percentage, and you'll notice that almost every single week is 100%. So they had a really great showing. They were able to successfully social distance. It looked like the most kids they had scheduled to come ever was, well, 100, but we don't know how that went. So It looks like 96, so close to 100 kids, but they were able to socially distance, and they had a successful summer. They had a good percentage of kids who turned out.
Haley, can you just go back? Can you just go back to the calculus project? And can you just explain what the calculus project is?
So the Calculus Project is a program that has it's to help kids get engaged and understand math in a practical way, and also, and I mean that just to say, to kind of like increase interest in math. It is what we would hope to do is attract kids who normally would not be attracted to math or told that they're good in math, and try and turn that around. It starts with middle school kids, and I believe it goes up until high school. In the past, it seems like they had a lot more kids who attended last year. So I can only say it's the remote learning. I mean, and the other thing too is I get the information that I have is based on the information that's fed to me. So what my understanding is that it was very hard for them to engage the students remotely. But did I explain the calculus project well, or do you have another question about it?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, you know, in a typical year, the calculus project pairs high school students that have gone through it with, in a mentoring way, students in the 7th and 8th grade. So there's like a real experience for the kids to see other kids that are learning to love math. And we started the calculus project. It is a way to ensure students who were traditionally marginalized from higher level maths, in particular our Black students, our brown students, and students of low socioeconomic, who otherwise might not take higher level maths and have access to it, as a way to do this. So the struggle was how to bottle all that energy and that peer kind of attachment and put it to remote and do it for the first time. And I think that's probably why you're sort of seeing a bit of the lower. I mean, I believe the year before we had about 100. So that's probably why you're seeing a little bit of a lower participation. So hopefully going forward, this is a program that will be able to meet in person as our school buildings open, because we do an in-person portion of this during the school year as well. Chad?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, I think one of the important things to note about this program as well is there are high school mentors that come down and physically work with students, and they're role models for our students. And that in itself is a motivator for a lot of our kids that aren't necessarily excited about math. Seeing their peers that have gone through this program and coming back to assist them and to give them the motivation that they need to really love math, I think that's a staple of what this program offers. And it's difficult to have that in a remote setting, because that live, hands-on, right in front of you, you know, relationship building just wasn't possible.
Right, and building that connection with someone who is like you. I mean, that's what's very key to it. So, so yeah, that's the calculus project. After calculus project, community schools. So they were great. The little people came. They really enjoyed it. They were able to do it safely. We had the math and literacy. Oh yeah, just some fun pictures of the kids. We did the literacy and math tutoring program. That was Ori did that. I think Christine helped him with. I think he and Christine did that together. The feedback that I got regarding that was that there was a 98% attendance rate, which was terrific. One of the things I think that really benefited it is that there were one-on-one sessions that we know from here, listening to Sarah talk, and in emails and information that's reflected in this that I've gotten from Julie Allen, was that the one-on-one was really key and really helpful, and kids really enjoyed that. Christine, you can talk more about that if you'd like.
Yeah, I agree. I'm sorry.
I'm just going to jump in because we all live this work and we know you know who Ori is. If you could take a moment and say who these people are and what their title is or what their responsibility is, because I think what I'm struck again and again is you have that the district is working in unison, right? So Ori does curriculum, Christine Trebisoni is director of special education, you have ELL, you have social emotional supports, all of the different components coming together. So if you could just say who their names and their titles and spell it out a little bit more, I think it's a helpful piece of information for the public to have.
Okay, I keep forgetting. Sorry.
You want me to do it, Candy?
Yes,
So,
go ahead.
Laurie Harrell is the K-8 curriculum coordinator and a great partner along with Sarah Davila and everyone here. We all work very collaboratively together. And I'm Christine Trebisoni, the director of special education. Ori and I collaborated. We also spoke with Sarah. What we noticed is that students perform best when they received one-to-one or very small group instruction in the areas of reading and math. And so we piloted this summer a program for the reading and the math instruction that was one-to-one. And we really saw some great improvements and some great progress that really impacted us. We tried to do that across all programs as much as possible, even if you were in a self-contained high needs program. And it really helped to inform our instruction moving forward now that we're in remote learning, really trying to do as much one-to-one and small group instruction as possible.
Thank you, Christine. So that brings us over to our summer counseling that we did this year. We offered summer counseling services this year. That's something that we have not done in the past during summer programming. We did it though because of the very unique and difficult times in which we are living. So what we did is we basically talked with the student adjustment counselors in the different schools during a meeting one time during towards the end of the year, just talking about how we would support our students. It was very kind of informal almost. And we decided, a group of us, that it's something that we felt that we really wanted to be able to support our students emotionally, continue sessions, be able to be there for drop-in times if they needed it over the summer. So we consulted with Christine, who totally supported us and gave us everything that we needed in order to do it. We talked with Liz Doncaster, who also supported us, and she worked with the general educator counselors, and we got together and offered student counseling services. Most of the calls, the contact was between a counselor and the students with whom they worked over during the year. So there wasn't a lot of crossover. As far as like if you worked at the Argenziano, those were the kids that you talked to. There weren't really crossover, which was fine. We found that it was actually, it was great for the kids, it was great for the parents, and it was really great for the counselors because you know, we felt like we were really doing what we were good at in a time where we felt very out of control. It was kind of like counselor, counsel thyself, and we really enjoyed it. And it was a great way for us to bond with our kids. The nature of the calls were all ones and twos. That means that the children were always safe. They were always, when doing a scan, doing kind of like a screening rather, we would ask them, where are you feeling? It was never, any kind of like a crisis or emergency. So the kids were always safe. We never talked to anybody who was in a yellow, orange, or red zone, which was great. So that was the summer counseling services. And I believe that will take us to the next slide, which are the challenges of which we've discussed, I feel, ad nauseum, and we are all aware that they exist. Some of the solutions and suggestions that we had to those were, one I thought was great, was a lot of times I think that we assume that kids are good at technology just because they're young, and that's not always true. So I think that when we do give them the devices, which is terrific for them to be able to access it, like they can go to their school, pick up a Chromebook, if there is a way that we could have pre-programmed on there in the favorites bar at the top, if we could have pre-programmed the platforms that we use so that they don't kind of have to search around and try to figure out how to do that. That might make it a bit easier for them. We also thought that providing teachers, as we've heard from all the directors, extra time and maybe even extra teachers, but extra time to plan, similar to how teachers got to plan for this school year. We got those extra days to try and plan for the school years. I mean, listen, hopefully it's not going to be like this next summer, but in case it is, it would be really helpful to teachers, because what they're trying to do is be very thoughtful and do that one-on-one planning and engage with kids with whom it's very difficult to engage with and have special needs, and a myriad of ways, a whole bunch of different ways. So giving that extra time to teachers to plan so they don't feel rushed and kind of like, I'm just throwing this together, would be super helpful. Let's see. And if we could have, when folks go to pick up during meal pickup in the summertime, if we had like a tech person who could be there, like we have Matt, or even maybe during the school year, who could be there to help, like folks could come with their devices too and be like, listen, man, I can't get my kid on his Zoom classroom, and maybe the tech guy can help them. So that was that thought. Then on the next, you know what, on the next screen, oh yeah, we're gonna end on a positive note. So it was good to look at what we have and what worked well for us, and that'll be on the next screen over. And one of the things that we talked about were the teachers were able to work remotely with students and connect well when they had the one-on-one and small group time. So that was a positive. Students enjoyed and were successful with that one-on-one small group. Logistics, there were no transportation issues, okay? I didn't get any calls from people being like, someone just dropped off a kid, this isn't my kid, right? So there were no transportation issues, there were no food allergy issues, there was no attendance issues, or so someone maybe having to leave a bit early for an appointment or something, and there were no safety issues around interactions with kids who sometimes display their disability, sometimes displays itself in an aggressive behavior. So we didn't have that. So I would say that there were certainly a lot of challenges, but there are a lot of things that we did well, a lot of things we thought about how to improve, and a lot of things that were actually positive. And that's it. That's ending on a positive note. I don't know if y'all have questions that hopefully I can answer. Yes, Chad.
No, I don't. I don't have a question for you. I just want to thank you for that presentation. Very well done. One of the things that I think you see and you heard from everybody who spoke was around what was working, what was not working, the pre-planning that went into trying to figure out how to best service students. For example, Patricia Murphy-Sheehy, who was on earlier talking about the high school piece, she's the math department head. And she spoke really to the idea of blended learning for students, knowing that students, if they just had one option, weren't going to be as successful as they needed to be. So the planning has already gone into how do we make that blended learning happen now so students can recover the credits they weren't necessarily able to over the summer. I think you also heard from Director Trevisoni about the importance of one-to-one interactions with students. That in itself brings out motivation in students. It really allows for much easier skill building for students. There's no competition. It's one-on-one teacher and student. And I think you've seen a lot of these successes transfer into what is actually happening in remote learning as we speak. The focus and the emphasis on the one-to-one learning, the small group instruction, having office hours so families and students can come have a conversation with their teachers so they can get the assistance they need. I think the tech hours around the technology that has been given out is an important piece and allows parents to deal with issues in an easier manner than they did over the spring. I think the videos that were created for parents, the how-tos, all of these things speak to the planning that we love to do to make sure that students and families are getting what they need. I can't thank the summer school staff enough for what they provided for our students over the summer in a difficult circumstance. Trying to access students when you can't physically get to them is extremely difficult. And I think the numbers, spoke to that, but it's a reality, and it wasn't from a lack of trying. It was the fact that when you can't access somebody, it's difficult to get them to come to you. And I think all of the students, especially in Ori's reading intervention program. They specifically, with Christine, one-on-one, 10 lessons of one-on-one instruction. And their numbers and their skill building increased significantly. We have successes, and now we're building on that as a district. And you know, it started with the summer program. So I really want to thank everybody for giving us that springboard through their hard work to really positively affect our students and families.
Chet, can I just add, sorry, Kaylee, that I think a huge positive was that we had 100% Somerville Public Schools educators working this summer.
Good.
We did not have to get educators from outside. Everyone rallied around their students. Everybody rallied around each other. We did some co-teaching together. The life skills class, for example, which had 10 students in it, had 2 full-time teachers working together to really support students so we could do some small group and individual stuff. So that was a huge thing for us. It made us better. It helped us to learn more. And we collaborated, I can say, in the special education department weekly. We had weekly meetings with everyone to say, how are we doing? How are we engaging? And I know for attendance, but attendance over the summer varies every year. People go on vacation, people access other things. People spend a lot of time on the internet, but our attendance tends to vary a lot in the summer as well, whether it's remote or
I think that's one of the things we also heard from families was that they wanted their student to participate, but they recognized needing to get a break. Having come off of the emergency leave, you know, in the remote learning from March until June, people were tired. You know, parents were tired, students were tired, teachers were tired. So what we really tried to do was identify the students based on the data collection we did in the spring to say who really could use this the most. So it was definitely a reduced number of students to start in each of the programs. And then from there, just work as hard as we could to give them an infusion of what they may have missed back in the spring, to be able to sort of bring them back to a bit of baseline. So if you notice on the reading intervention, the target grades were grades 2 to 4. So really kind of the key formation of reading times, right? And going over key literacy parts. You know, I think similarly with spell, both the K to 8 and the high school, it was really around particular language development skills that Sarah and her staff focused on, not kind of the broad skill set that we would typically do in a summer, and to do it in a one-to-one delivery. So it really was us fine-tuning as well, I think, the one-to-one models as much as we can. That is what in part we're using now with our tutoring and with some of our small group sessions.
I'm going to make a quick comment, and then Mr. Green, do you have a question or a comment? Okay. Director Trefasoni's comment about having the same staff working through the summer or families needing to take a break. Our educators also worked so hard during the summer, during the spring. We're planning for the fall and during the summer. And what I will say with such gratitude is to see familiar faces from a kid's perspective really, really matters. And even if we're seeing it through a screen, it is not lost on me that educators need a break, educators, administrators, and to go that extra mile. I mean, you know, some kids in my neighborhood, when they went to pick up, I don't know, a Chromebook or something, and they saw, you know, the school secretary, and they were over the moon, right? I think it is not all of those roles. We said this earlier about the crossing guard, Lou Schneider. Adults play an incredibly important role, and you may not even know that you are, but that consistency and somehow continuing our community through an extremely trying time is so important. So for all of the educators and staff who have worked really since March 13th, full on, deep gratitude. Mr. Green?
Yes, thank you. First, thank you for the presentation. Thank you for your hard work. I think the annual summer school report is one of the clearest examples we have as a district of just how hard and complicated this work is. you know, every year, how every year we get this report of all these things that are going on, and also the vast number of students who participate in these programs speaks to the fact that for all of our thinking, actually education is and probably should be a year-round activity. And so we should be thinking about how we can actually make that the norm, that we actually think of school education as a 12-month activity. But in particular, this year, obviously, doing a full remote program is no one's idea of what we want to be doing, and no one's idea of how we would do schooling in a vacuum. But in the same way that we have learned lessons from the summer program that we're applying to the schooling, and I think when I talk to my colleagues in other school districts, Somerville has probably one of the most robust remote education plans going currently, in part because we actually put in the time and effort to think it through. But I want to think about, you know, one day when we're normal, when we're something approaching normal again, and how I don't want normal schools to look like they did 2 years ago. And I'm hoping that we are also learning things right now that we can take into the new normal. And I was hoping you could say, maybe tell me something about some stuff you learned that you will apply once we are back in schools in person.
So do you mean during the school year or for summer programming in particular?
Either, both, whatever we've learned that we can use going forward.
Wow, you're going deep, Mr. Green. I would say that I think that one of the things that I learned is that, so I'm going to go back to one of the first things I said when we were talking about some of the challenges we face, and that's not every kid is, despite the fact that they spend a lot of time online playing video games, not every kid is savvy. And if you have an anxiety disorder or a social disability or social disorder, it is very challenging to get them to engage in a way that is meaningful. So I think that, and not going in with the assumption that all kids like love to be online and they all understand how to get onto Google Classroom and all of that. I think that one thing I did learn is that if we are going to do something, we need to put our effort into doing it well, meaning expending our efforts on kind of wondering what if and what, like, where are we going to go? I think that one of the reasons why the remote learning works so well is because that is what we're focusing on doing. And educators are like, this is what we're doing, this is where we're at. And I think that is very helpful to help educators and counselors have their focus and know how they're going to deliver their education or services to their students. And a lot of collaboration. I think it's very important that we be understanding and collaborative with one another, and learn from one another and listen to what the other person is saying. And that's it. I mean, that's basically, I could go on and on, but I think that's a couple of good little nuggets for you.
Well,
I might add to that, if it's okay. Engagement, sure. Like, it's about the relationships, and you know, we talk about relationships all the time, but what the data's shown us is that when we work really hard on those relationships, and we have relationships with students and families, and we check in with them, or we send text, or we call, or we do all those pieces, that students feel more connected and they're willing to take some greater risks and seek out the help. You know, they're not self-talking that I can't do this, I'm not going to try. I know that Sarah's program this summer really proved that, but I think that was part of what we saw even in creating Ori and I in the one-to-one reading. We really found that connection of having that, like, this is the person who's going to check in on me. This is the person who knows what my relative strengths are. This is the person that knows what I really need to work on. And they believe in me and they check in and they say, here's what we're going to do. Here's how we're going to come back. And I think that engagement means different things. So the way we engage when we're face-to-face is a little bit different on how you engage with people. You know, how do you still feel connected? It's really hard to still feel connected. And I think that's really about knowing each other and really knowing the person. And for students and teachers, I think it was really about getting to know each other. And I know Sarah will back this up, the family engagement, the relationships that we've been able to form with families has been key. Because now we're not just a teacher in the classroom, we're someone that you're seeing on a regular basis that you can check in, that you can say, I'm struggling, or this is really working, or how can I help you? So Sarah, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
So, Mr. Avila?
Yes, I did want to add one thing, and also, although I really do agree, and we have learned that the one-on-one from an instructional perspective is really important. I do think that there was another aspect, which is around community building. So in the SPELL program, the beginning of the day was not one-on-one. It is large group and coming together, around a common purpose, a common sense of why are we here? Why is this important? What are we learning about the world? So I think that, this building sense of community is more than interaction, you and me, but it really is a sense of us. And that's important to bring forward in meaningful ways when we return.
Thank you for that. Are there any other comments on that? Superintendent, would you like to jump in?
Yeah, I mean, I could go on for like a half an hour on this. I mean, I think in all seriousness, the part of the problem is we can't live in extremes. What we had before was a use of technology that was periphery, and what we have now is a use of technology that is dependent. And I think what we have to do is to find the sweet spot of where technology as an innovation can make a difference. And I think, sometimes it is in the conversations and the information exchange and the collaboration. And, in a place like Somerville, where it can take 45 minutes to get across the city, that can be a really powerful way to ensure parents, students, educators are all connected. To talk about the benefits of this, for the student. I was on a call earlier today with the key embedded counseling organizations for Somerville Public, Riverside, Cambridge Health Alliance, Home for Little Wanderers, and then some of our internal folks. And for some students, telehealth has been really good. They are able with the screen to share and to connect with their counselor in a way that they may have been intimidated doing it in person before. And they can do it regularly and more often and don't have to worry about a schedule in that way. So there's, I think, lots of opportunities going forward. In addition to one-on-ones, like how can you personalize and customize the use of a block of time in a really focused way using the technology. Kids can actually hide in a class. They can find lots of ways to do it and disengage. And in a class of 25 kids, it becomes easy to do that if you want to, if you find ways to do it. It's very hard to do that when you're doing small group and you're doing sort of one-to-one with an educator. You can't really hide. You're there, you're with the educator. And I think you can make a lot of progress in targeted ways. So it's going to be these things that I think we're going to need to go back and look at so that post the pandemic, post the remote hybrid world that we're going to be in this year, as things get back to a new normal, we don't lose the opportunities that technology has given us in a powerful, meaningful way.
Yeah, and a lot of our kids, they don't have the adverse distractions around them. So a kid who's easily triggered, kind of like, there are kids who are like loving it, because they're like, oh, there's nothing to kind of trigger them. So yeah, I agree. It's tricky because I'm an in-person person myself. So I have to rewire how I think about engaging with people too, which is challenging, but doable.
Yeah, for sure. Me too.
Absolutely. With that, it has been a long day, and Kaylee, I am so excited about you running the summer. I would like to extend the invitation for you to come back later in the school year wearing your new cap of the social emotional coordinator. Is that your title?
Yes.
Right. It is an exceedingly difficult time for all of our kids at all of the levels, and even the ones who may appear to be doing just fine. Sometimes they're the ones I worry about the most. And so we'll schedule it, but I would love to have you back later in the school year and hear what you're learning, how the kids are doing, and certainly as we start to think about next year's budget, what that might look like too. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for putting together another great presentation, and also thanks for always head and heart. You bring it all the time. So thank you so much.
You're very supportive, even on my stutter steps. So thank you. Have a good day.
All right. Be well. Superintendent Skipper, did you have anything else to add on the superintendent's report? And we are at 8:45. Holy moly.
I mean, really just a quick update on rec and community schools. I really can't give enough shout out to both organizations for being flexible and for trying to meet the needs of our families during this time. So in terms of the numbers, right now for rec, they have 265 students participating on Wednesdays, and then they have 349 students participating on the other days as part of the cohorting. And then community schools has 440 students in their afternoon typical block, and about 220 students in that 12:30 to 2:30 block. So combined, there's a lot of kids that are getting some component of that social emotional mixing, being together, recognizing, they're part of, the school community. I just want to thank both organizations for being flexible. My understanding is there still is some space. And I think what's happened is, as families have seen how safe they're being, socially distant, masking, sanitizing, they've been more comfortable letting their students participate and signing them up. So again, if parents are looking for one of those programs, there is still space there, which says a lot about the capacity that those two organizations have been able to build quickly. So I just wanted to share that with the school committee.
Thank you so much for that. It is a district-wide effort. It is a Somerville-wide effort. It is certainly impressive. Thank you so much for that report. We are now going to move on to item number 6, report of the subcommittees. Dr. Ackman, the school committee meeting for rules management of September 11th. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. The rules subcommittee meeting for September 11th, 2020. The meeting was called to order at 9:02 a.m. In attendance were Dr. Ackman, Dr. Phillips, Ms. Barish, Superintendent Skipper, and Mr. Iwasaki. Dr. Ackman presented file EBC Supplemental taken from the Massachusetts Association of School Committees, which is intended to be an overarching policy that gives the superintendent temporary broad authority to act with regard to a wide variety of school committee and district policies that could be impacted due to the pandemic. After discussion about the nuances and language of the policy, for example, on which particular policies should the superintendent notify the school committee after a decision was made and where she should seek permission in advance, the subcommittee agreed to adjourn and reconvene on September 16th to discuss potential substantive edits, and the meeting was adjourned at 9:38 a.m. I move to approve the rules subcommittee meeting minutes for September 11th, 2020.
Eleanor Barish seconds.
Thank you so much for phrasing it that way. There is a motion by Dr. Ackman, seconded by Ms. Barish. Is there any discussion on the report? Can I get a roll call vote to approve the motion to accept the report? Thank you.
Dr. Phillips?
Yes.
Ms. Krepshin?
Yes.
President McLaughlin, Mayor Curtatone? Mr. Green?
Yes.
Ms. Barish?
Yes.
Tone?
Yes.
Dr. Ackman?
Yes.
Ms. Norman?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you so much for that. Moving on to item number 6, the unfinished business, the Somerville Public School Policy Manual. There are 2 policies being presented this evening for a second reading, which is file JE, Attendance Addendum, and file EBC, the Supplemental. And we'll just do them in order. There's the file for JE, the Attendance Addendum. I would entertain a motion.
Move to approve file. Sorry, I don't have the letters in front of me. JE. I apologize. Thank you. File JE attendance addendum.
Sarah Phillips,
Audrey Green,
second.
seconds.
There's a motion by Dr. Ackman, seconded by Dr. Phillips. Is there any further any discussion on this policy? Yeah, Ms. Patone. There you are.
I got a little eager with the button, sorry. Chair Norman, through you. One silly thing, I guess the file is called JE, but the printed version says JL or something, or JH. I don't think that matters as long as you guys make that correct. Whatever it has to be.
Good catch, thank you.
But that's non-important. But I did have a question. This might be for the superintendent about, you know, it says at the end, during periods of synchronous learning, they'll observe for the student's presence, and if it's observed, they're going to go through the sequencing of supports, which is excellent. I guess I had a question about the term continuously present. What does that actually mean? I also had a question. Fortunately, I have not had to witness this yet, but if a student is absent, are we still using the robocall programming? Like if a student doesn't show up to remote, are parents getting notified for synchronous?
Yes. Yes, for Aspen, yes. So yes.
Okay, so family's going to get the calls and the emails saying your kid didn't show up.
Correct, for the daily attendance, yes. I think the reference to the continuous piece is we occasionally have issues where a student will, you know, put their webcam on, identify themselves, I'm here, put their webcam off. Teacher will be teaching, and the teacher will engage the student as part of the class, silence. And then, you know, 10 minutes later, 15 minutes later, the teacher will circle back, engage the student in chat, silence. So when that happens on a regular basis, one would have to say that's like giving the student a bathroom pass and the student never comes back to class. So the student's not present. What that invites is a conversation with the parent and with the student. It happens at the middle grades. That's where we're seeing it. So there's going to be some conversations had with parents for their middle schoolers that is like getting a pass and leaving class and not coming back. You got to be present. You have to be there. I mean, that's really different than the kid legitimately needing to go to the bathroom and coming back and maybe missing the first call. So the teacher will do multiple check-ins, you know, particularly when the first time they're not hearing the student. And then we'll report that to the dean of students or report that to one of the counselors or to the assistant principal so that there can be some follow-up with the parent, particularly if it happens more than once.
So just to clarify, that's the kind of direction that is going to be given to staff. If you have like one day that a kid does that, you know, there's a bye, but if that happens more than one day, that's the time to raise the flag. Thank you.
Correct. Just had this conversation with the principals today.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. Are there any other questions or comments on this policy? Hearing none, can I get a roll call vote on the attendance policy?
Certainly. Dr. Phillips?
Yes.
Ms. Krepshin?
Yes.
President McLaughlin? Mayor Curtatone? Mr.
Yes.
Green? Oh, sorry. Okay. Mr. Green?
Yes.
Ms. Barish?
Yes.
Ms. Patone?
Yes.
Dr. Ackman?
Yes.
Ms. Norman?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you for that. The next item is file EBC Supplemental, and I want to thank the entire Rules Committee, but in particular Dr. Phillips for going through and really organizing it and adding to it so it is a much more accessible policy. And Dr. Phillips, did you want to make any comments about this or introduce the, I'm stumbling on my words. I just got really tired. Okay.
I am with you, Chair.
Okay. So how about we do this? Let's get a motion, a second, and then we will open up for discussion.
So I move that we consider the edited version of EBC Supplemental, which is titled SP Edits, File EBC, and blah, blah, blah.
Is Emily second?
There is a motion by Dr. Phillips, seconded by Dr. Ackman. Are there questions or comments? Dr. Phillips, would you like to jump in now? And then Ms. Patone?
The only things I wanted to comment is that in the edited version, what I tried to do is point us to the signal, which to my understanding is two critical pieces of the policy. One is authorizing the superintendent where noted to suspend, revise, or recommend policies. And then the sentence continues, right? It's giving the superintendent new authority. That authority is sunsetting at the end of the emergency is what it says in the last line of the policy. The other important signal, I think, is that the back to school plan that we approved constitutes the policy of the school district during the pandemic, and we authorize the superintendent to carry it out. That's what I was aiming to have us be able to focus on in our discussion.
And I appreciate the organization that you added to it, because when I read the edited version, it's to me it was much more clear, much more accessible. Ms. Patone, did you have a question or a comment?
Yes, through you, Chair Norman, possibly to Dr. Phillips. It sounds like, thank you for that summary about what the differences were. And again, the flow is better and it's less clunky. It's a cleaner document. Was there anything else substantive that was changed, or anything, let me correct myself, was there anything substantially changed between the two documents besides flow and improvement?
I tried really hard not to make any changes. In the last sentence, I added an unless otherwise noted, which is not in the original.
Thank you. Do you have a follow-up question, Ms. Patone? No? Are there any other questions or comments on this, Ms. Barish?
Thank you, Chair. Sorry about that. I just one quick addition that I would like to consider here. And thank you to Dr. Phillips through you for these revisions, for making it read so much more clearly and more straightforwardly. My one maybe small concern is that the last sentence states that it shall expire upon the end of the emergency as declared by the governor. And I'm just, I'd like to suggest that we add or the mayor, whichever comes last. As we've seen, there are times when our city is under a state of emergency, but the state is not. And I wouldn't want the superintendent's powers to be hampered in case that should happen.
I was hoping you raised that. Can I just accept that as a friendly amendment?
Yes, I was just about to suggest that. So that would be wonderful to accept that as a friendly amendment. Thank you, Ms. Barish, and thank you, Dr. Phillips. Mr. Green.
I'm hoping this is also a friendly amendment. At the end of, sorry, so many windows open. At the end of paragraph 4, right before regards to the scope, I'd like to add the sentence, the superintendent will bring any minor policy change to the school committee for notification.
Dr. Phillips, would you accept that as a friendly amendment?
Yeah, as long as the superintendent's okay with it, I think it's great.
Okay. Thumbs up. Fantastic. Are there any other questions, comments? Hearing none, can I get a roll call vote on this policy, please?
Sure. Dr. Phillips?
Yes.
Ms. Krepshin?
Yes.
President McLaughlin? Mayor Curtatone?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Ms. Barrett?
Yes.
Ms. Patone?
Yes.
Dr. Ackman,
Yes.
Ms. Norman,
Yes.
motion carries.
Fantastic. Now moving on to items of new business, agenda item number 8. The first item is the MASC annual meeting delegates and resolution. So obviously the conference, the annual conference will not be taking place in person, but will be remote. And I'm bringing it up tonight not to go through each of the resolutions, but to ask my colleagues to go through it thoroughly for next time, and also to think who would like to volunteer to become our representative, our delegate to that conference. Mr. Green?
So so for those of you who may not know, either on the committee or in public, I serve as the current vice chair of what they call Division 9, which is the Division of Urban Schools. Urban schools being self-declared, so it actually gets very confusing. But in that role, I've gotten to hear the scuttlebutt is that for the first time in probably any of our terms on the school committee, there will be a contested election for one of the officers at the state level, for the office of president-elect.
Within MASC.
Yes. And as you all know, that's almost unheard of. There's a contested election for an MASC office. So I am putting myself forward to be the delegate as I know the players, and what will possibly be a fairly weird but important election. Also, because I know firsthand how, to be blunt, ineffective MASC has been in this crisis. So the possibility of making some change and seeing some shakeup is probably good.
I appreciate you volunteering. I think what I'm going to do is ask everyone to think about it, to look at all of the different resolutions, and think about if you would like to be the alternate, or if you would like to also run for the delegate. We could have a vote next week, in 2 weeks, pardon me. But also to think about what we have done in the past, and that does not necessarily mean we need to do it in the future, is to consider each of the resolutions. And in the past, we have authorized our delegate to use their own good judgment to vote on amendments at the delegation, when everyone's there. I forget what it's called, the session. I'm sorry, I'm getting very tired. And Mr. Green, can I ask if you have any information about what the election process for this contested election, will that be something that the delegates vote on, or will each member
It'll be done by the delegates, so each committee gets one vote.
Can you at least prepare us more information on the different candidates?
If I have it, I will do so. I've only heard the names so far, so I haven't seen like platforms or whatever. But whatever I have, I will bring.
That would be helpful, and if there's anything in writing that we can do. Thank you so much for making me aware of that. You know what? We won't vote on the different resolutions, but it has been come to my attention. Thank you, Ms. Santiago, for always paying attention to the details, that we need to submit a name prior to our next school committee meeting. And so Mr. Green has graciously volunteered to be our delegate. Is there anyone else who would want that position? And also we need an alternate delegate. Hearing no one also volunteering. Mr. Green, thank you again for serving as our delegate to this session. And is there anyone who would like to volunteer?
I'll be alternate.
Thank you, Ms. Crutchin. I think this is the lineup we sent last year too.
I think so.
Awesome. Thank you so much for you. Okay, and so next time we will vote on how to instruct our delegates to vote. Thank you for that. And thank you, Ms. Santiago, for always being on top of the details. we have done the grants, and so we're now moving on to, oh, excuse me, legal counsel search. So as we know, our current legal counsel, Mike Wong, is moving on to retirement and is cutting back, and it will be with us only until the end of this calendar year. And so we need to start talking about what kind of representation that we are looking for, and to start interviewing potential replacements. Ms. Krepchen has volunteered to help me with that. I would like to have, I know it's late, but if we could get some brief conversation that we started here, and we can put it on next agenda as well, is if there is any strong preference or thoughts or questions about what kind of law, do we go with a law firm? Do we, are we looking to bring someone in-house? Are we looking to look at that? Mr. Green and Ms. Ackman. And then Ms. Phillips. Okay.
I believe Emily had the hand up first, so I'll yield the floor to her first.
All right.
Thanks. I'm just saying my vote is in-house. It seems like up until this point, we have utilized someone quite a bit, and it seems quite likely that we will need to for various reasons. And I think it is worth our investment to have someone in-house. That's my opinion.
Thank you so much. Mr. Green?
I have long since been in favor of us exploring in-house options, recognizing that there will be, hopefully rarely, but occasionally issues where that may be politically fraught, but frankly speaking, the way in practice our lawyers work anyway, those issues, if they were to come up, we'd probably get a separate lawyer anyway. So I think the advantage we get from having an in-house lawyer who also therefore is available to help with trainings and with knowledge sharing and research, et cetera, is vast. And I think if we can make it work, we should.
Thank you, Ms. Phillips, Ms. Krepchen, and then I'll go to Ms. Batone.
I wanted to raise a different issue, so if Ms. Krepchen or Ms. Batone wanted to talk about in-house versus not, I can go back.
Ms. Krepchen?
Okay, sure. I would just encourage us to keep an open mind, because I think there's definitely pros and cons to both in-house and having a law firm as we currently have. One of the things, as I was thinking and talking to Carrie about this, one of the benefits to having a law firm is that you have access to multiple different lawyers who may have multiple different specialties. And I know Carrie has talked about some examples where we've used other lawyers at Mike Long's firm for various different reasons. And also, one of the things I've really appreciated about Mike Long is his perspective that comes from working with lots of different districts. And I know oftentimes he'll say, like, I can't give you details, but I've had this other example where a district is doing X, Y, or Z, and I've often found that perspective helpful. But I also see the pros to having in-house. So I just think we should keep an open mind and consider both when we're looking.
Thank you. Dr. Phillips, did you want to get in here, or was this your comment?
Sure. This is not about in-house or not, but as we move forward, I'd like us to encourage whether, I'd like us to consider whether we can use the same strategies that we use to ensure we have a racially and ethnically diverse teaching pool, to ensure that we have a racially and ethnically diverse group of candidates being considered for our in-house counsel. I think it's really critical for us to demonstrate our commitment to equity at every level of the district.
Thank you for that comment. Ms. Batone?
Thank you to Dr. Phillips for that comment. I also wanted to follow up with Ms. Krepchen's reference to having an open mind about there are advantages to having inside counsel. We have talked about trainings and supports that we could get and possibly some financial advantage. But in addition to what Ms. Krepchen referenced regarding the experience sets with other districts at the same time, which I have to say has been really powerful this year as we've had more challenging and differences in this work. Also, the lack of they're a third party. They don't have any. They don't work for anybody in our district other than as a client or as us being their client. And I think there can be a little, not to say they would be biased from an internal person, but I think it can be really challenging sometimes as an internal person to have a very human perspective. So I'm just going to throw that out there, but I can see the advantages to both, and I look forward to this process. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to call on myself if there's anyone else. So I think, Mr. Green, would you like to jump in? Mr. Green.
Being in the queue, that's all.
Okay. I've given this a lot of thought. This is a question that came up several years ago when we had a very small firm of 2 previous to Mike Long becoming our legal counsel. And we've talked about bringing folks, counsel in, and so my gut feeling would be, I think we benefit from having a firm that our primary lawyer can draw on the expertise of other people in their office, but also has peers, professional peers, also doing school law work, legal work, which is a very particular field, to be able to talk things through. I think that is helpful. We do it as a body and we benefit from it. I also think we have a separate firm that handles our special education needs, and my expectation we would continue to have that as well. There is also questions about who would be available, and so that is going to be another factor in this work, because I think a lot of those specializing in school law are very busy. Mayor Curtatone, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, if I could. I'm looking forward to the conversation. I have some experience in the city side my camera's messed up. I'm getting off. So as we discussed this almost 20 years ago, we shifted a lot of outside work inside other than specialty work. I would just say, labor side, I submit, I want to echo on your comments. We have to consider all the, having practiced law for more than a decade myself, it's not just a lawyer in an office. There's the support team around it. I mean, the clerical staff, the paralegal work that we'd have to invest in as a district, and you're not going to get the full suite of services you would in a firm. I'm still not convinced there's intense enough work to have justify the type of talent you would need in a district like Somerville, judging where people would be in their careers and who you have to get in here to have to pay them. You wouldn't get really big a bang for our buck with a high level firm. That's just my opinion initially, but I look forward to the conversation.
Thank you for that. Mr. Green, did you want to get in there too?
Yeah, I just wanted to, give a point of information to Ms. Phillips' very good point, which is that our policy on hiring doesn't extend just to teachers, but it's all Somerville staff. So if we were to hire an in-house, yes, it would be required to go through our hiring process, which says that we will interview at least 2, if at all possible, candidates of color.
Thank you for that comment. I know, Dr. Phillips, you have another question?
Through you, Chair, to Mr. Green, I think. Does that apply if we seek a firm? Does that same process apply, or would we have to decide purposefully to apply it?
I think as a matter of policy, it probably doesn't apply. And I think to your point, we should act as if it does.
Yes. So I'm going to make, Superintendent, did you want to make a comment?
Yeah, I mean, I think Somerville is a big enough, complex enough district that having kind of the full tool set of a firm is beneficial. We also have 7 units that we negotiate with, and in normal course of time, in addition to the kinds of labor issues that happen. And so you could, if you had just an in-house, you could easily see a situation where that person is so consumed with the negotiation pieces that it's hard to stay ahead with the labor pieces. We also have student issue too, right? So one of the things that's been nice about having a firm like Long's firm is that we've been able to have somebody that's kind of worked with us on the negotiation side, somebody that's been able to work with us on labor side, and somebody that's been able to work on student issues. And we keep them pretty busy. So when I first came in, I think I was of the opinion, given the types of things we were seeing, that having somebody in-house as kind of our main point, that might be beneficial, because there needed to be so much capacity development in the staff. But we've done a lot of the capacity building within our HR department, and there's always more room for trainings, but we do use the firm for those trainings as well. So I think, not that I get a vote, but I do think we do warrant in the complexity and the volume of the things that we deal with, having the benefits of a firm.
Okay. Are there any other comments or questions? Ms. Crutchen and I had an initial conversation about how to proceed. I have gotten a number of recommendations of firms and individual practitioners who do this kind of work. And Ms. Crutchen made the very practical point. We might not want to go too far down the line of who we want until we know who actually is accepting new clients. And so I think if it is with the permission of the committee, I think the next steps would be for Ms. Crutchen and I to start some initial conversations and phone calls of finding out who is available, who is not, and then just then as a group move farther down that process. Because if someone is saying our practice is closed, then that is important information to have at the start of the process and not farther down. So stay tuned. We'll have more information for you at our next meeting. And with that, we did the grants. We are now on to item number D, FY20 scale and EDP diploma requests. Can I get a motion, please?
I move to approve the scale diploma request for Vienna Erazo in Winthrop, Massachusetts.
Eleanor Barish seconds.
There's a motion by Dr. Ackman, seconded by Ms. Barish. Is there any discussion? Can I get a roll call vote on that diploma request, please?
For Dr. Phillips?
Yes.
Ms. Crutchen?
Yes.
Ms. McLaughlin, Mayor Curtatone?
Yes.
Green?
Yes.
Barish?
Yes.
Catone?
Yes.
Dr. Ackman?
Yes.
And Ms. Norman?
Yes.
Motion carries. Congratulations.
Fantastic. Our next item is donations with a recommendation to approve. Can I get a motion, please?
I move to approve with gratitude. Approve with and accept with gratitude the following donations: 167 face shields from Tim Wheaton in Wellesley, Massachusetts. 9 copies of India Unveiled from Ackman Press in Columbus, Georgia. $100 from Cheryl Endicott to SBS Food and Nutrition Services, and $200 from Edmund Jones to El Sistema.
Eleanor Barish
Seconds.
There's a motion by Dr. Ackman, seconded by Ms. Barish. Can I get a roll call vote, please?
For Dr. Phillips?
Yes.
Ms. Crutchen?
Yes.
President McLaughlin, Mayor Curtatone? Mr. Green?
Yes.
Ms. Barish?
Yes.
Ms. Patone?
Yes.
Oh,
Dr. Ackman?
yes.
Ms. Norman?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you so much. We are now on to items from board members. Are there any items from board members tonight? Hearing none. Are there condolences, Dr. Ackman?
Yes. The Somerville School Committee would like to extend its condolences to the families of Gwendolyn Simmons, mother to Gilbert White, Dean of Students at Somerville High School, to the family of Catherine Goslin, mother to Courtney Goslin, principal of the Winter Hill Community Innovation School, and to the family of Arthur Roderick, father to Patty DeFreya, secretary of the Somerville Public Schools.
We are adjourned.
Good night, everyone.